has been a great demonstration for the potential of that region. And this sent a very strong message to the entire world that there is a very high potential in that region. This region is flourishing. This region has a lot to do when it comes to contribute to the future technology and the revolution of artificial intelligence and the need, of course, for power. Basically, we have had a great visit, and I believe this is equivalent to the rest of the countries in the GCC. During that visit, we had a wide range of topics that's been discussed, whether it's on the regional security, on the future economic cooperation between the two countries, and how to untap the potential between the two countries. These topics actually has varied, whether it's how to partner in artificial intelligence, how to partner in energy, and how to expand also in being a critical and a vital part of the supply chain for the United States economy, which is the leading economy in the world. I believe this is was very much perceived in a positive way by the region. And of course, we know that the policy varies from one administration to another. We are glad to see that Middle East and GCC in particular is a priority for this administration, and we believe that there is a lot of potential for both of us in the region and the United States that we can untap in the next few years. And also, I think that one of the key elements of the president's visit is making sure that the situation in this region remain stabilized. And we have seen what a delicate period that we are going through in that region, whether it's on their talks, on the US talks with Iran, or with the situation in Gaza and the changes that happened in Syria. And we are hoping that these kind of engagements will lead us to a point where we can have all these conflicts settled and hopefully being more focused on the prosperity of the region.
President Trump has been labeled a transactional president. He certainly likes to do deals. He's written a book about the art of the deal, and he likes things of value, especially if they come free. I want to ask you about the gift of this Boeing jet that Qatar want to give to the president to use as interim Air Force One. It's been met with a lot of controversy back home. What was the purpose? What is the purpose of this gift? And is it, as some critics say, an opportunity for Qatar to gain influence with this administration?
Well, look, actually, you know, we have seen that there was a lot of, you know, controversy that's being created out of this, what I call it an exchange between two countries. And basically, the relationship that we have between Qatar and the United States is a very institutional relationship. And it witnessed different administration, and the institutional relationship remained very strong and at the backbone of this partnership. The plain story is a Ministry of Defense to Department of Defense transaction, which is basically done in full transparency and very legally, and it's part of the cooperation that we've been always doing together for decades. For example, the airlifting in Afghanistan is something that we have almost 80% of that done by our air forces. The security deployment of United States during the World Cup to support our efforts was done by the United States. And I see it as a normal, you know, a normal thing that happens between allies. And basically, I don't know why people, they are thinking about it, that this is considered as a bribery or considered as something that Qatar wants to buy an influence with this administration. I don't see any, honestly, valid reason for that. And I believe that there is a huge issue in misconception, or unfortunately some spoiler who are trying to portray Qatar as a country that it tries to buy its way. And I believe if you look at the track record, at least for the last 10 years, whenever is some scoop coming out in the media and trying to put Qatar under a spotlight, that Qatar is bribing to get the World Cup, or Qatar is bribing the EU Parliament, or whatever, until like the end, Qatar is trying to bribe the Prime Minister of Israel. I'm sure that, it does tell you something, that for the last 10 years, none of these cases has stand or had any proof that Qatar has done anything wrong. We are a country that would like to have strong partnership and strong friendship, and anything that we provide to any country, it's provided out of respect for this partnership, and it's a two-way relationship. It's mutually beneficial for Qatar and for the United States, and I believe everybody acknowledges this. I think that we need to overcome this stereotype of seeing Qatar as a small Arab nation because it's gas rich. It cannot find its way without buying it with money. It's really a misconception that hurts a lot, not our reputation, but the reputation also of other countries and the institutions.
Is the controversy worth it, though, if it means that there's going to be further congressional scrutiny of all of Qatar's dealings now with the US?
Well, there is actually nothing have been done by us under the table, or like we are trying to do like a covert operation. It's a Ministry of Defense to Department of Defense. There is a proper legal review is now conducted between the two departments, and nothing has happened yet, actually. Now, and for our intention is to have a very clear exchange that the US is in need for to accelerate, a temporary Air Force One. Qatar has the ability to provide this. We stepped up, and basically a lot of nations has gifted the US many things. I'm not comparing that to the Statue of Liberty, but I don't know if this is like sounded a little bit maybe strange for the US because it's coming from a small Arab nation. I think that this has played some way a factor in this, but I'm hoping that people in the United States and even the politicians over there, they look at us as a friend, as a partner, as a reliable partner, that we've been always there for the US whenever we were needed, whether it's in the war against terror, whether it's in freeing American hostages from all around the world. It's not something that we've been doing to buy an influence, but this is a duty on us as a partner, as an ally of the United States, and as there's a duty for the United States toward Qatar.
I want to turn to regional geopolitics. Yesterday, the Israeli Prime Minister says that Israel are now carrying out operations with the purpose of taking over the Gaza Strip. They will carry out an unprecedented attack on Hamas, that is a quote. The war is clearly entering into a new phase. After a ceasefire that was negotiated earlier this year, Qatar played a pivotal role in that. It lapsed in March. The death toll continues to go up. There's still what's thought to be 20 hostages still alive in the Gaza Strip. There's a humanitarian crisis going on there. What hope is there now for a lasting ceasefire, Your Excellency?
Well, it's unfortunate that we've been seeing the situation unfolding in this way, and it's becoming very frustrating for everyone, and especially for us here in Qatar. We've been there from the beginning, trying to mediate and trying to get to a deal where it alleviates the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza and freeing the hostages and bringing them back to their family, and trying to bring a path that will create a peaceful environment and security for both people. And that's basically what we were aiming. And what I think that the last year and a half now has shown you that the only way forward is through negotiations. And unfortunately that sometimes, or many of the times, these negotiations being sabotaged by political games with a very narrow vision, and it's just being postponed. One of the examples, we had the first deal that freed more than 100 Israeli hostages in November 23. It collapsed in 1 week. Then we had the second deal that's been based on a framework that's agreed on December 23, and we couldn't announce it, or we couldn't finalize it until January 25. That states very clearly that this deal should include multiple phases, that we have to do everything we can to avoid to return to the war, and ensuring that all the hostages will be freed, and there is a withdrawal from Gaza Strip, and there is a clear way forward for the Gazan people to alleviate their situation. This deal has collapsed in 2nd of March, and we have seen how the situation has been unfolding since then, and the blockade on Gaza for now more than 60 days. And we are hearing also some irresponsible statements about the humanitarian situation over there, about the way of distributing these aids and distributing food in form of meals and calculated calories for pre-qualified and pre-screened people. I think all these things that are happening has been unprecedented in our world today, and it shouldn't be acceptable for the international community. Yes, yet we have seen that unfortunately the Israeli government is carrying it out with impunity. Now we continue our efforts despite everything and every attempt to sabotage our efforts and try to also blackmail us, and continuing attacking us while we were the only country that's helping together with Egypt and United States. And we have just that this is just making us more determined to bring stability to the region, to end the war in Gaza, to free all the hostages and to bring them back to their family, and to provide security for both people. The rounds of negotiations that took place in Doha in the past couple of weeks unfortunately didn't lead us anywhere yet, because there is a fundamental gap between the two parties, which is one party is looking for a partial deal that might or have the possibility to lead to a comprehensive deal, and the other party is looking just for one-off deal and to end the war and to get all the hostages out. And we couldn't bridge this fundamental gap with whatever proposals we have provided, given the past experience of the first deal that it collapsed. And basically, we are stuck in a situation that if this operation is starting, is just going to postpone the diplomatic conclusion of the war, which will end only diplomatically from our point of view, and will just cost us a death toll on the Palestinian side and also on the hostages side. Just I wanted to add one very important point to this. The delicacy of that situation in the region right now is critical. And basically, we have seen that the continuation of this campaign and this way and this behavior, and it's not only in Gaza, but Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, Syria, is something becoming unbearable. Yet you have seen that all of us as governments, as countries, we are calling for peace, we are calling for peaceful resolutions, and there is nothing is stopping this kind of behavior. Yeah. That will only add anger to the people in that region. This will add legitimacy for non-state actors, and is just going to fuel the narrative of extremism and terrorism.
In President Trump's speech last week in Riyadh, he talks about the birth of a new Middle East, the economic transformation, and also the Gulf states playing an increasingly influential diplomatic and mediation role in the prospect of regional stability. Can there actually be regional stability in the absence of a solution to the Palestinian and Israeli conflict that has been going on for decades?
Well, we believe that this conflict is a core for the regional stability, and we hope that there will be a chance sometime soon. It requires a strong leadership from the Palestinian side, from the Arab side, and from the Israeli side, because there will never be a deal without a compromises between all the parties, that ensuring that there are conditions that can be created for the people to coexist together. This region has been, for centuries, with a beautiful social fabric that has different backgrounds and different ethnicity and different religions. Unfortunately, it's been drained with these ancient wars and proxies that evolved over the last few decades. I cannot recall since I was born that there was a moment of stability in the region. When we talk about the overall, we are blessed that the GCC was protected, except during Iraq war. But since we grew up on just conflicts after another.
We've got a couple of minutes, but I do want to ask you, because you were in Tehran over the weekend, how likely is it that you think we will get to an Iran-US nuclear deal by the end of this year?
I believe there is a positive momentum. We had a very good conversation with the President Trump when he was here. We see him as a president who tried to talk to everyone, which is something that we are very much encouraged. And also he's trying to avoid any conflict or any escalation. And this determination in itself, it's showing leadership and political will. On the other side, on Iran, we have seen and sensed the same positivity. Of course, Oman is leading the mediation, and we are trying to support their efforts. I have suggested that after the visit of President Trump to have a trilateral engagement with the Iranians and our Omani colleagues. And we were discussing ideas that can bridge the gaps between the two parties. We hope that those ideas will work. The last thing that we want in that region, a nuclear race or another round of escalation that's next to our countries.
Final question on the Qatar economy. We've had the World Cup bump, you could call it. And of course, you have big visions of what you want to achieve in the next few years. What is the plan the next 5 years by 2030?
Well, it's a very ambitious plan. I have a friend who once told me that the World Cup was like an IPO for Qatar, and I believe this was, thanks to God, that this was a very successful IPO, and it's been oversubscribed, and we have seen the growth in many sectors after that. Basically, Qatar is trying to work on a transformation plan where we transform our economy into more being diversified, with a diversified base internally. And we've been talking about this for the last 25 years, and we've been working toward that objective. We are focusing on developing different sectors, whether it's on the manufacturing, on the logistics, on the education, on the healthcare, and the tourism and technology. And we have seen the technology revolution right now that's happening. And we have seen that this technology revolution is not only happening away in the world, but countries like UAE is leading in artificial intelligence, or Saudi leading in data centers, and we are trying to be part of this ecosystem and being a complementary for this region. And basically, we see that the potential is huge, the capability is there, and Qatar has successfully built global brands in the last few decades. Qatar Airways is one of the main examples, when you see that you have a leading airline being nominated #1 for the last few years. This is something making us proud, and we would like to see more and more brands coming out of Qatar like this.
Your Excellency, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage His Excellency Saad Sharida Al-Kaabi, Minister of State for Energy Affairs for the State of Qatar and President and CEO of Qatar Energy, and Ryan M. Lance, Chairman and CEO of ConocoPhillips, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Francine Lacroix.
Hello, everyone. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we have 17 minutes to talk about the energy complex. Minister, let's start with you. Thank you so much for, to you and your beautiful country for hosting us. Now, with the visit of President Trump last week, there was a lot going on, of course, in Qatar. We saw huge commitments from the countries he visited, including this one. Were you under pressure to make a deal in the energy sector for President Trump?
First, it's great to be here at Bloomberg's with all of you, with Ryan and yourself again. Regarding the visit of President Trump, of course, it was a historic visit. We were very thrilled to have him here as the first sitting president to visit Qatar. Pressuring us on doing deals, I think, as you know, President Trump is a businessman, first and foremost, and he understands business very well. We had several deals that were done in Qatar during his visit. So there was the energy sector. If we look at the energy sector, we had a project in Qatar. For the last 70 years, we've had American companies here. So we've had several projects, Northfield East, Northfield South, where Ryan is a partner. These are all commercial projects that have American presence. We have 2 projects in the US, the largest single investment in LNG export facility in the US, the largest ethane cracker in the world in the US, about 30 billion project. So these are all commercially viable projects that we're doing. From my vantage point as the chairman of Qatar Airways, we had a tender for buying airplanes that we need for the expansion of Qatar Airways, and Boeing gave us the best deal. It was better than Airbus, and we went ahead with that because it was the most commercially viable. If you look at our investments in QIA, we have already made a lot of investments in the US, and we're making more, and these are all commercial deals that we're doing. Our military are buying equipment that they need for their military. So regarding pressuring us to do deals, I would say no. I think we're happy to do deals with American companies because they provide a win-win solution for us. And all the deals that we do, like in the energy sector, are 25, 30-year deals. So they have to survive different administrations, CEOs, and so on. So I would say pressuring, no. But we're happy to do deals where they are mutually beneficial.
Minister, you mentioned you're chairman of Qatar Airways. You had some pretty incredible profits. So how do you see that going? How did you achieve them? And actually, how do you see the introduction of Riyadh airlines in the region affecting your business?
Of course, we attribute the excellent profit to several factors. We have excellent staff, excellent leadership. So all the crew members, the pilots, the ground staff, everybody working in the company has contributed. Of course, first and foremost are the loyal clients to Qatar Airways that made this also possible. And also, this is a cyclical business. Everybody's doing well in the airline business, and we just need to keep going with the same rhythm to ensure that we continuously can have good profits. Regarding Riyadh Airline, I think we're very happy for our brothers and colleagues in Saudi Arabia that they are embarking on this expansion in the airline business. It's a huge country, Saudi Arabia, whether it's size of the country or size of population, and I think it's overdue to have additional airlines and airline products in Saudi Arabia. And if there's anything that we can do to support Saudi Arabia from Qatar Airways, we'd be happy to do that, but we wish them all the success. And I think it's very much needed for Saudi Arabia and the region.
Ryan Lance, President Trump pledged to drill, baby, drill. Is it happening? And if it isn't, why not?
Well, I think the president's got a unique ability to boil things down to a bit of a bumper sticker. I think the drill, baby, drill, people get fixated on how many rigs are running in the U.S. and is that representing a drill, baby, drill. I think it's a broader strategy that the president is trying to articulate around taking the natural resources that are endowed to the U.S. and really continue that growth and development. So it's got multiple dimensions. It's permitting reform to speed things up. It's more infrastructure being built, high voltage transmission lines, it's gas pipelines. It's eliminating the LNG pause that the prior administration put in. So I think it's a statement that articulates a broader strategy that wants to use the endowed resources that we have in the United States to continue that growth and that development and continue to be able to import and export energy that the full world needs today.
Break-evens for U.S. shale, I think, on average, pre-trade wars and tariffs were about $65 a barrel. What's the new break-even level now that the cost of pipes have gone up, but also drilling has gone up because of tariffs?
Yeah, I don't think the break-even probably hasn't moved a lot. I think long-term, if you're going to see oil prices in a comfortable range, maybe in the 70s or 65 to 75, we'll still see continued modest growth out of the U.S. Now, what happens at sub 60 is we start to plateau in the U.S. and even in the 50s probably start to decline the production a little bit. So there is kind of a equilibrium place even in the U.S. that allows the shale to continue its maturity and its growth. But we see plateauing production, probably the end of this decade coming out of the U.S. unless there's going to be another technological breakthrough in our business. And don't bet against our industry because we're, as His Excellency knows, we're pretty good at trying to figure out how to get more out of the subsurface endowment that we have in our country.
Minister, most of Qatar's LNG sales are also linked, of course, to oil prices. How has the oil's slump this year affected Qatar?
You know, the oil slump, I would like to add to just what Ryan mentioned. You know, in general, all oil companies look at their revenue and look at their capital expenditure over the next few years. And the way you can spend more capital, there are two things. There's capital to sustain. People don't talk about sustaining your actual production, which gets more expensive with time to maintain it and drill additional wells and so on. So you need a lot of revenue for that. In addition to that, the additional capex to expand and to keep additional reserves coming. And you need, in general, you'd need somewhere in the range of $70 to $80 in my view, to be able to sustain the current production and increase. And when you look at the US, for example, I mean, one of the things that came out of the visit is a better understanding of, you know, with my counterpart, you know, Chris Wright, Secretary Chris Wright from the US, and the colleagues that came with President Trump. They have an ambition of growing their power to for an additional 100 gigawatts of power. And that's for AI, that's for additional industry that they want to bring back into the US. All that needs power. And if you don't have additional investment, you know, to sustain that power, you know, from gas and other sources, they've opened up coal and others, you know, is going to damage that ambition, if you will. So I think if oil prices decline below 60, there definitely is going to be a decline in investment, and all the requirements for power are not going to be fulfilled. But, worldwide, not only in the US.
And Mr., are you committed to the oil price link, no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, the oil price link, I mean, some of our products are you know, we produce oil, we produce condensate that's associated with gas, and some of our gas is linked to crude. But of course, if crude comes down, it affects the entire, whether it's petrochemicals, whether it's oil, whether it's gas, fertilizer, it affects the whole thing.
Ryan, I mean, to the minister's point, do you think Donald Trump's push for more energy production in the US, but also faster permitting of LNG products, will affect the market?
Well, we certainly hope so. If you think about the market in the LNG side, it's probably growing 1% to 2% compound annual growth. So it's a market that's growing from about 400 or so million tons today to something probably north of 700 million tons over the course of the next decade and beyond. So it's going to take a lot of growth. It's going to take growth in Qatar. It's going to take growth in the United States, the two biggest suppliers in the world, to satisfy the enormous amount of energy growth that's coming. It's going to be power, as His Excellency has talked about, around the whole world, not only in the United States, but around the world as well. So that's coming. And unfortunately, we're endowed with a very large gas resource, as is Qatar, with the large North Field. And we're proud to be a partner here, and proud to be putting our investment in the U.S. for more liquefaction capacity and exporting that product to around the world as well.
Minister, where does potentially higher U.S. exports leave major LNG producers like Qatar?
Again?
Where, if the U.S. exports more LNG, where does it leave Qatar?
No, I think, you know, we are the biggest supply that's going to come from the U.S. next year. We're going to start our LNG export by the end of this year, and really start the full production sometime in the next year. But the first LNG that will come from our Golden Pass LNG, which is the largest single export project in one go that's built in the U.S., is going to have 18 million tons of production. We own 70% of that. So we will be exporters from the U.S. I think the U.S. volumes are going to go to certain markets that are mostly Europe, South America, and our volume will predominantly be serving Asia. That it's difficult for the U.S., I think, to reach, or the entire volume to go to Asia. But in general, I think we need all that volume. It's us, it's the U.S., I think some Australian volume and others to carry people in the next 20 to 30 years. And you have 1 billion people around the world that don't have basic electricity. So the need for electricity and power is huge. So we're not worried at all about you know, having a supply glut or anything like that.
And I think I would add that people immediately go to the competition between the U.S. and Qatar. It's really not. It's a cooperation because of the different markets have to the growing demand. So it's a cooperation. It's really not a competition.
But how do you see this? I mean, when you look, Ryan, at the impact of Shales' new model of financial discipline or investor return, how is this different this time to previous downturns in 2015 and 2020?
Well, I think the balance sheets of the companies in the business is so much better. We've gone through consolidation and mergers and acquisitions, and the net result of that is the balance sheets of all our companies are in much better shape to withstand some of these downturns. Our company in particular, we've got a pretty deep inventory of low-cost supply resources, and that's what we're trying to drive. So you can be profitable through the ups and the downs in this business. They're invariably going to be there. If you don't have a plan to deal with the volatility, you'll be dead in this business. So, you got to have that, and it starts with a very strong balance sheet and being able to invest through the cycles with a very long-term global view of supply demand, which we have, and it's very constructive.
And Minister, I know you've also been in talk with buyers such as China and India for a fresh round of LNG supply deals. Is there a sticky point? When can we have more news on that?
No, I think we're, after this talk here, I'm flying to China. We have the World Gas Conference in China that I'm speaking in tomorrow morning, and I'm meeting all the buyers in China. We have a great relationship with China. We are the largest supplier to China, and they are the biggest buyer by far, by more than double, anybody else that's buying from Qatar. So we have a very good relationship. They are discussing with us additional volume. India is discussing with us additional volume, but we have multiple countries that are discussing with us additional volume. And these negotiations take time, and some go a little bit further. I think what you're alluding to is some articles that came out regarding sticking points and so on. You always have sticking points with all negotiations, whether it's with India, China, or anybody else. Everybody wants a better deal from both sides.
Everybody always wants a better deal, right? Let's face it. Ryan, when do you think U.S. shale production will peak?
Tell me the price. So if the price is in the 50s, we probably have a sustained price. So I'm talking about not just what's happening today, but if it sustains itself over a long period of time, U.S. shale is probably, it's peaked and will start declining in the 50s. It probably plateaus for quite a while in the 60s. And actually, if you get back to sort of that comfortable range that His Excellency talked about, there's continued growth in the U.S. shale. So we believe it could go in the 70s, it could go over 14 million barrels a day from its current level of low 13.3, 13.4. So it really depends on what that sustained price is going to look like. If we have a longer term price, like we're seeing today, it's gonna flatten out.
Minister, Qatar was also amongst the first GCC states to invest in gas exploration and production around the world. So, what new investments do you see on the horizon from Qatar?
Yeah, we are one of the largest, if not the largest, company around the world in owning exploration blocks. Exploration has a 10% success rate. So, if you drill 10 wells, one is successful. So we have been successful in some regions, but this is a continuous drive to explore more, and we're really participating in new exploration blocks around the world. We have had some successes, and I'm very optimistic about the future, but it takes time.
How much LNG is Qatar Energy trading currently? Is this something that
LNG trading?
Trading. There's a lot of excitement actually in the market about
trading was something we started just a few years back. What we saw is there was money left on the table, if you will. Traders from around the world were buying Qatari. We have some spot cargoes sometimes, and they would buy our cargo and make money off it. And we have the capability and can actually establish a trading organization. So we established a trading organization. Currently, we are trading around 10 million tons of LNG, physical trading of 10 million tons of LNG. The mandate is more than 50% needs to be non-Qatari volume, which is the case today. The ambition is by 2030 to reach somewhere in the range of 30 to 40 million tons of non-Qatari LNG traded by our trading group.
But will you also reserve a portion of the output from Northfield East for spot trading? And how big?
I think, we're going to be producing 160 million tons of LNG as projects that we are participating in. If you include the US, we're at 77 million tons today. We have 70 ships today. We're adding 128. So all that will be really under the control of our trading organization, where they can trade spot, trade some of that volume. Not all of the volume will be locked up in long-term deals, but we'll have plenty to deal with.
Ryan Lanza, in the minute that we have left, how do you see demand over the energy industry actually developing over the next year or two?
Well, I think we're pretty constructive in the demand. It's probably dropped off a little bit with all of the economic uncertainty in the world today. So demand grows probably 700,000 to 800,000 barrels a day this year. But long term, I think you can expect around 1 million barrels a day of growth. And we really don't see the end of that coming into this decade, into the next decade. So that's why we're constructive long term. There's a little bit of spare capacity on the supply side, which has caused the price to be down a little bit with some economic uncertainty. But the long-term growth projections are pretty healthy for this business.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for a good conversation on global energy supplies and security. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We are probably in a recession right now.
There's no question the uncertainty slows down growth.
And we're going to make deals, but they're going to be fair deals. They're not going to be rip-off deals. In the fourth quarter, you will feel the power of Donald Trump's economy.
The danger of recession looms bigger.
Please welcome to the stage His Excellency Ali bin Ahmed Al Kuwari, Minister of Finance for the State of Qatar. His Excellency Faisal Al Ibrahim, Minister of Economy and Planning for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And His Excellency Mehmet Şimşek, Minister of Treasury and Finance for the Republic of Turkey, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Stephanie Flanders.
Excellencies, we don't have very much time. Thank you very much for being here. I think Donald Trump would be really enjoying this conference so far. He would really like that we have begun every session with a question so far about his trip. And I'm afraid I'm going to be no exception, because we still have a lot of questions and details to think about from that visit last week. Excellency Minister Al-Kuwari, we had very big numbers talked about in terms of the deals that Qatar was going to do with the US. I think there was 243 billion, but the president also talked about an economic exchange worth $1.2 trillion. That's 5 times Qatar's GDP. Are these plausible numbers? Do we think that this is, did you just engage in a sort of bidding war, or should we take these numbers seriously?
Well, I mean, thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. First of all, I mean, it was a great visit by His Excellency the President, to the region. I think this is a big statement, as Sheikh Mohammed said, for the region, and recognition how important the region economically, politically, and geo-economically and geopolitically, and from a stability. And this is, I mean, something that really we take it, also, and we appreciate it. From I mean, deals perspective, I think there was the $160 billion deal, with the Boeing. This is with Qatar Airways, and this is a normal, I mean, renewal of airplanes. This is part of the airline business. if you go with any airlines, this is normal, progressions. And, the airlines, they do it over a long period of times. And also they have their own capital, their own access to finance. And they do like many deals like, buying and selling and lease buyback. I mean, so it's a very normal deals, and this is not something that we see it, and Boeing is an excellent aircraft, with the GE, engine. So it's in line with the Qatar Airways, strategies, in line with the, and the other deals is in line with the, our participation. The $1.2 trillion you talked about is, we are talking about economic partnership. And when we talk about economic partnership, it has a win-win situation. It's the U.S. companies doing business in Qatar. Qatar is doing business with the U.S. trade, and over some period of time. So it's not something abnormal. I mean, QIA continue to invest in the U.S. The U.S. is an excellent market. Is giving good return for QIAs in line with their investment strategies. Looking to their trade again. U.S. enjoying a huge surplus. With Qatar for many years, is one of, U.S. is the biggest import partner for Qatar. So these things are really normal course of businesses, course of actions, and the U.S. being the U.S., it's the biggest, economic partner for Qatar. So I don't see this as like a big number, but this is a very normal course of actions, course of businesses, and course of commercial activities. It's a purely commercial, purely needs. Our defense, partnership with the U.S. is huge, and again, this is something that we benefit, as part. This is part of our, beefing up our military here in Qatar. So it's really something very normal, and we really value the partnership with the U.S. and it's very significant.
And just to quickly follow up, I know that the QIA is going to have more and more firepower as you ramp up the LNG exports. What are the key priorities for your international investments?
Yeah, QIA, they have their own investment strategies based on region, based on sectors. Of course, the priority sectors, today is technology, AI, pharmaceutical, infrastructure, real estate, and they review these strategies every year and they change it accordingly. And as I say, today the U.S. is the biggest opportunities are in the U.S. In terms of these businesses, but they continue to spread around as well. And these strategies get reviewed every now and then to make sure like they are aligned and taking advantage of the opportunities, yet mitigating risks.
And Excellency, Minister Ali Ibrahim, we had some even bigger numbers talked about in terms of Saudi deals last week. But I guess many people would say the biggest gift that the kingdom has given to President Trump in recent months is a lower oil price, and it is at its current rate is much lower than the kingdom needs to cover the external obligations, and certainly well below what you need to balance your domestic budget. So I just want, how are you thinking about how you're going to bridge that gap if the oil price stays roughly where it is?
So thank you, Stephanie. It's important to keep in mind that what we're undertaking in Vision 2030 and beyond Vision 2030 is a long-term, big picture plan that is all about restructuring the Saudi economy. And I think other Gulf countries are going through something similar. We're doing that because we're investing in resilience, institutional resilience. This means that we will deploy the capital in the way that helps us get these returns, but help us also get capital in the way that helps us get these returns, but help us also get the momentum to restructure. If you look at oil specifically, of course, our budgets are no longer driven by oil. Today, they're driven by our priorities. On the energy markets and oil, we've always been solving for long-term market stability. That guarantees that investments will continue to flow to provide the right kind of supply that the global economy needs. And of course, as part of that is OPEC plus discipline. So if you ask us 6 months ago, 1 year ago, etc., we'll always tell you that we're always ready for scenarios, multiple scenarios, and we have the buffers We have the long-term fiscal planning and medium-term frameworks that help us adjust depending on what scenario actually plays out. But we're always thinking about not the next 12 months, but a longer-term horizon. And that's what most of the GC countries are doing as well. The GC countries and the economies are bright spots or jewels in the global economy today because of the ability to plan long-term, because of the ability to deliver long-term, and because of this institutional capability that's growing, coupled with leadership's vision, people's determination. But that institutional capability is helping us ensure that we continuously evolve and become agile.
And it is true that in the past, you have been agile, you've responded to periods of lower oil prices by cutting the domestic projects. I guess now we look at the pipeline of projects you have, things like the World Cup, they are commitments that are hard to reduce. So we're just, do you still have that flexibility when you have this enormous pipeline of committed spending and big projects?
So this transformation is anchored in discipline, but also bold action. We've prioritized our spend for many reasons. Predominantly, how do we accelerate our diversification? How do we continue to empower human capital and to continue to build institutional capabilities? Of course, a subset of that has to do with public commitments, global commitments, such as that of the World Cup and Expo 2030, and so on and so forth. And that's all in our priority list.
And Minister, Excellency, Minister Simsek, we were talking earlier, the biggest thing that happened last week during Donald Trump's trip to the region, at least where Turkey is concerned, was the lifting of sanctions on Syria, and indeed your president was on the phone call. We've also seen the PKK give up on 40 years of war against the Turkish state. What's the peace dividend or the economic dividend that comes from that for Turkey?
Well, peace dividend will be great.
Just hold on, I think you lost your mic. There you go.
It's not working? All right, I have a new microphone. So peace dividend is likely to be massive. First of all, having a stable, peaceful, and prospering Syria on its own is a huge gain for the region, and of course for Turkey, because we've got 911 kilometers of border with Syria. So clearly that is going to help in a big way, because conflicts drag you down, and as we address the conflicts, as we rebuild, functioning states, it's huge boost for the entire region. So that has been a welcome move. But going back to one of the component of you've highlighted, the PKK has waged almost a 50-year war against Turkey. But last week, they have agreed to disband and disarm. This is also huge because according to a study, including the opportunity cost, we have wasted almost $1.8 trillion over the past 5 decades combating terror. Now, of course, the peace dividend will be huge in terms of channeling resources to more productive areas for development, for progress. So in that sense, these two developments are going to be huge in terms of geopolitics no longer being a drag, but actually, being a source of leverage to help Turkey move up.
And foreign investors will be hearing that and would feel positive about it, but at the same time, they have in their head the detention of Mayor Imamoglu in March and the very sharp fall in the currency that came with that. Investors were very frightened off at that time. They seem to be still hesitant to come back to Turkey, even though the currency is stabilized, even though you have very high, painfully high interest rates. What is it going to take to pull back the long-term investors?
Well, first of all, the 3-year program that we have put in place is on track, is intact, and is delivering. We have inflation, which is still high, but at 40 months low. And over the past 2 weeks, there's been, again, recovery in FX reserves. Investors are actually back. Interest rates are coming down. CDS, the risk premium, has fallen significantly by well over or close to 90 basis points. So actually, if you look at the past few weeks, there's been a recovery in investor sentiment, and that's reflected in financial market conditions.
And very quickly, not so much, though we don't see it so much on the sort of longer term money, which obviously you would feel, I would assume, more comfortable than the hot money coming in. So we still haven't seen that. Of course,
the program doesn't rely on hot money, but FDI has also picked up over the past 12 months. Turkey is a very large economy with a pretty decent infrastructure and a huge pool of talented people and significant regional integration. So highly diversified economy. So I think when the dust settles, they will be looking at countries that are resilient to global trade fragmentation. They'll be looking at countries that would benefit from stability and prosperity in the region. I think Turkey remains the top candidate in terms of FDI inflows. And, with disinflation, predictability is improving.
Mr. Al-Kawari, we mentioned Syria. How are you continuing to support Syria? And are you thinking about investment in real estate or other areas where you can support reconstruction?
I mean, regarding Syria, I mean, I just add to the word of Excellency Mohammed, on Syria. Syria is very important. The stability of Syria for the region is extremely important, and the prosperity of the Syria is very, very important. And now we have a great opportunity with the presidency and the government in place now to really, to see stable Syria, growing Syria economically. In terms of our role for Syria, I think Syria now, they are building a country from scratch, and they will need all the help they need to, establish the country. They need energy, they need water, they need an economy, they need, infrastructure. So, us and our partners, for example, Qatar and Saudi Arabia, that we announced that we paid their arrears with the World Bank. This will unlock around $80 million of support from the World Bank. Also, we're supporting them, again with our partners in Saudi and others. For example, to develop their electricity, to develop their energies. So I think Syria at this stage really needs help to establish themselves, as a country. Going forward, I think with the plans, they have in place, I think it's going to be a great economic opportunity there for investments and for really supporting the Syrian people. Syrian people are very talented. We see them, in Germany, we see them in many other places where they have, contributed significantly to the economies of these countries. So I think Syria's, growth, and development is very important for us. So this is something we're committed to do, support them.
Just thinking about other regional investments, Kuwait is discussing converting its deposits in Egypt to investments. We saw the UAE do that last year. Is that something that Qatar is considering?
President Sisi was in Qatar over 2 weeks ago, and we announced, again, an investment package, with Egypt. So we continue to see Egypt as a great opportunity for investments. In terms of whether to convert the deposits or, to do further investment, this is not something we have discussed, but we continue.
You're not discussing it.
No, it's an option, but it's not something we're gonna. It's one of the options. But in reality, what we see is Egypt is has great opportunities in the real estate, in the tourism sectors, in the manufacturing, and I think from an investment point of view, mean, if we are to do the investment, it has to be in a purely commercial basis with a good return. So this is what, I mean, look, but again, the relationship with Egypt, it's very significant, and we view Egypt as a great, a great potential for growth, in the future.
Mr. Ali Ibrahim, the big shift for the kingdom last year was that you became a capital importer, not an exporter, which reflects some of the investments that you were talking about in your other answer. But it does mean you need to attract stable funding. And last year we saw another fall in foreign direct investment. So why is it, do you think, that the FDI is falling, and how are you going to get back on track for that?
So Stephanie, maybe I'll just take a step back and talk about the GCC a little bit overall, and I think tie that to your earlier question. The GCC countries' non-oil economies have grown 3.7% in 2024. That's almost double global growth. And if you look at each country's transformation, there's an acknowledgement that we've been for a while operating below our potential, which means that's operating at a loss. And that loss, maybe in earlier generations can accept that loss in the short term, but compounded is not good for future generations. And that's why I think Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Saudi Vision 2030, and other countries in the region have taken it upon themselves to restructure long term. And because of that, the number of opportunities will only keep growing. We're not just moving from consumption to complexity and production and innovation and exports. We're also attracting capital that will help us do that because of the opportunity, and attracting talent at the same time. If you look at what's happening globally, let's say what's happening with US trade policy and its impact, we believe that this is ultimately going to lead to two things. One, we've always talked about what the new form of globalization will look like. Today, that answer has been brought forward. Now we can actually start shaping what the world will look like in terms of trade. And number two, the global economy is only as strong as its weakest link. And we've seen multilateral platforms where His Excellency also participates with other countries in the region, that there's been growing, I'd say, drag on the global economy coming from weak links. I think the response to these policies will only create stronger global players, stronger global economies, from emerging to Europe to whatnot. If you look at things such as the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive that the EU announced, and how that was a little bit revised recently because of the impact that would have had on the European economy. Some GC companies today are divesting because of that. And we think that still needs to be revisited. I'll come back to your question. Foreign direct investment is a long-term game. It's flows and stock. In the kingdom, we're seeing signals of not just the actual number, but the number of licenses, the number of people coming into the kingdom, number of headquarters being set up, the number of deals that are being discussed and negotiated. In 1 year, we had a very large deal that helped spike that figure and then was challenging afterwards. But our target remains the same, 5.7% of GDP in 2030, around 100 billion in terms of flow in 2030. And we're working hard, 900 reforms to create a better business environment and continuously evolving.
Minister, one of the things that was a challenge, we talk about the weakest link. One of the problems for Turkey was the unorthodox monetary policy for a period of time. Now, my colleagues tell me you're the keeper of the flame for orthodox monetary policy. But it's painful at the moment. You have high interest rates to bring down inflation. Do you worry about the impact on the domestic economy of that? And is it sustainable? Are you going to have to do something to support consumers or raise minimum wage potentially ahead of time?
Well, sorry. We rebuilt monetary policy and a strong fiscal position as well. And I think all is set for disinflation, but no treatment is without any side effects. So we are aware of some dislocations in certain sectors. And that's why early this year, we've extended support to some of the labor-intensive export sectors. So we are looking at specific remedies while keeping the program on track. But the essence of the program is to bring inflation down so that we can set the stage for sustainable high growth. So a temporary pain is worth taking, going through. But at the same time, we're looking at short-term fixes to address some side effects.
So, but you won't, if you have, we're seeing potentially factories closing, we have households still dealing with the high cost of living and rising cost of living. Do you see needing to give in to some pressure to support households?
Well, first of all, last year we've created close to 1 million new jobs. That's new jobs added. So manufacturing is obviously struggling because our key trading partner, Eurozone, is still flirting with recession. So global growth is dismal, and our main trading partners aren't doing that well. So understandably, manufacturing sector is struggling. That's understandable, but manufacturing accounts for only 23% of our GDP. So the rest of the economy, in particular services, is doing really well, continue to create jobs. And households remain in good shape because household debt to GDP ratio is less than 10%. This is not a leveraged economy. So in that sense, while, again, short-term pressures are there, I think the key is to sustain the program, to deliver disinflation, and that way we lay the foundation for strong, sustainable, long-term prosperity.
I know we've run out of time, but I do want to, the title, I want to get back to geoeconomics and also potentially to President Trump. You'll like it. We started and ended with him. But the deals that, and certainly the trade deals that the president is doing or trying to do in different countries, there does seem to be a sting in the tail. You do the transaction, you give good value, and you announce a big number, but he is quite committed to making countries help him take China out of global supply chains. Now, this is a region that's hoping to benefit from continued much higher trade with China than with the US, but also the strong relations with the US. Are you worried, Excellency, that you, at some point, he will force you to choose?
Well, I mean, we enjoy good relationship, of course, with the US and good relationship with China. China is one of the biggest destination of our LNG, trains, and again in terms of imports. We like to work, in balance with both with both powers. I cannot see, I mean, the US would reach a stage like as countries, either me or China. I cannot imagine this. I think what we are going to see, I mean, there was a huge disruption, in the trade system, what we have seen as a result of the Liberty Day, decisions. But to me, I think these things will settle, and we're going to see a new rules, governing, the trade and the global trade, in general. We have now some dust, we have unsettlement. I know that congratulations, I should say, in the reaching a deal last week, between US and China on interim or transit, tariffs. But eventually, I can see this thing is going to really go away. There has to be really a new rules, for governing this. See, the world, the globe has worked very hard to build a globalization rules-based system, and I cannot just see this going away. There is going to be changing to the regulations, to the rules, how we engage, and the fair competition, unfair competition. But eventually, I think there will be a new regulations. I don't see a problem, I think, dealing with the both both places. I think China is an important country, US is an important country, and we'll never get asked, to choose between countries.
Okay, very quickly.
If I may add, I think this administration has demonstrated its leaning in on dialogue. We've seen that with the US-UK deal, with the early indications of US-China potential deal. This region, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the rest of the GCC are always focused on prioritizing dialogue. We heard from His Excellency the Prime Minister today about dialogue. We saw President Trump in Riyadh last week, the result of dialogue, what it led to, including lifting the sanctions on Syria. I think, and realizing that it's part of our interest as economies in this region to connect strongly to international markets, for us to be more resilient and to be more meaningful partners of both the US and China. I think it's in the interest of both that we remain strong partners of both, being part of the dialogue and being part of this new form of globalization that His Excellency mentioned.
I think since we're running out of time, I'm going to let you have the final word, if you'll forgive me, Minister, and thank you all for the good discussion.
Thank you.
Well, we were deeply and are deeply honored by the presence of His Highness the Emir of the State of Qatar for joining us today. Thank you to Stephanie and her esteemed panelists for that insightful session. And thank you to all of our speakers this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, we are excited to announce that the next edition of the Qatar Economic Forum will take place from May the 12th to the May 14th, 2026, so a little under 1 year away, and we look forward to welcoming you back in Doha. Now, before the break, I would like to thank our official partners, the Qatar Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Qatar Media City, our culture sponsor, Qatar Museums, our innovation sponsor, QRDI Council, our premier sponsors, Qatar Investment Authority and QNB, our knowledge sponsor, McKinsey & Company, our participating sponsors, IDA HSBC, Investment Promotion Agency Qatar, Qatar Financial Center, Qatar Free Zones Authority, Qatar University, our airline sponsor, Qatar Airways, our connectivity sponsor, Ooredoo, and our tourism sponsor, Visit Qatar. We would also like to thank the Permanent Committee for organizing conferences at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for all of the support. Now, this concludes our morning block of programming. Please join us for refreshments just outside this room. The program will resume at 12 p.m. And just a reminder, later on stage,